Ladies and gentlemen, time now for the next panel discussion. Please welcome to the stage the panel members. Paul DeLue, Director of the Oil and Gas Institute, Robert Gordon University. Ethan Novak, Founder and CTO, Innovator Energy. And Taylor Shin, Vice President, Ventures and Growth, BHGE. And your moderator for the session, Monica Simos, Energy Dialogues.
For us as an industry, we're going to need to continue to scale those. And the way you scale those, we've done a lot on our side of Baker Hughes to bring in the right talent to train our current talent. But a lot of it is the people and the men and women coming out of graduate school or coming out of the universities today. And they're a bit different than when I went to school. So going back to kind of a consumer-based view, when I was in school, we didn't have the iPhone. I never grew up in a world where you had connectivity and the ability to connect. At the same time, really anyone coming out of school today, they've never lived in a world without that. And the ability for them to understand things like the Internet of Things and figure out where the best Wi-Fi signals are and think through what is the digital age, they've already lived that through their life. And so for a lot of us as an industry, how we scale these technologies you've heard about, and yes, they're real, and yes, we're working hard and committed to you to bring those technologies to the field. We've got to work together, but it comes down to who are those men and women in the next 20 years that are going to implement this, and who are our partners on the other side of the project. And so,
and actually, it's quite an interesting fundamental question. We don't work with the government in Mexico to look at, as Mexico is opening up its industry, how many people do you need, when do you need them, what skills do they need to have? And we do a similar exercise at the moment for the United Kingdom around the question around is how do you start looking at energy, skills, and the number of people? And it certainly becomes quite a strategic question, because if you start thinking about some of the dynamics we discussed over the last day and a half, we see our industry changing and all the talks you had over the last day and a half. We see technology changing at the same time. We see the energy transitioning happening, and we're seeing business models changing. And this is probably one of the first times in recent history where we have all these changes happening at the same time. So we need to start thinking about how do we look at our skill base to be ready for that dramatically changing environment, and how do we skill people for success. So I was intrigued when Lorenzo mentioned last night, when you look at Baker Hughes GE, I think it's 64,000 people work for the company. If you think about over the next 20 years, it's very likely that half that population will retire or will move on to other things.
For my own personal take, I think that one of the most important things for the oil and gas industry is to expand the scope of what you define oil and gas. And typically when people say that, they talk about renewables, and I'm actually not talking about renewables. I'm talking about the downstream things that happen after downstream. So all the ways energy is used and transmitted, and materials and other things that come from the oil and gas. I know there's a focus in the industry on that, but definitely a focus on innovating the same way that the tech industry is innovating in digitization. I think for millennials, I think it's really important to have people see that there is a greater impact, and that's obviously something that's really important to the millennial generation.
Thank you very much to all our panelists. Thank you for the audience being here for the last panel, and I think that's all for us.
Yeah, thank you.